Hi everybody, I'm here with Rafael.Baptista, the director of POLIS, which is in a new science competition. We're very happy to have you in our competition and to have you here. I want to start with asking you just about about the genesis of your movie. If there is any influence from other directors, from your national situation, and yeah.
Yeah, it it's a really short movie, around 8 minutes. So I will try to be simple, to not spoil the movie. But it's an essay movie that I wrote it in 2018, but it was concluded in 2019, and it's a essay movie based on some cinema reference that I was really watching and studying in that time. That was, say, cinematographers like Chris Marker or Jonas Mekas, Agnes Varda, and Marguerite Duras, and Chantal Akerman. I think that it was my baseline to this movie, and it was a movie that I want to talk about language, and getting this essay about language and put it in a political way that talked with the matters here in Brazil, and mostly in Rio de Janeiro, that where I am from. That here we are facing since 2012, I think. So here in Brazil, we have some political issues since then. It's about 8 years now, and I talk about surveillance, about political struggle here in Brazil, and it's about that. Basically, it's about that. I get some philosophical and psychoanalytical reference to put this machine, that is the narrator, in the center of the trouble. It will talk about its difficulty to watch people. It's a machine that its function is to watch people, what they are doing, but at the same time it's a machine that is in crisis. It's an existential crisis because it have some issues about watching people. It don't know if people are really meaning what they saying, or if they're not meaning what they saying. It's a problem of discourse, right? And along the movie, this machine will think about this and will try to talk about this problem that it was facing. Basically that.
Okay, yeah, I will stay if you want on the machine because I found very interesting, and because it's a really I don't want to say cerebral, but it's a really an essayistic kind of movie. Like when we saw the movie, we found something that usually it's lost in contemporary cinema. You have mentioned for as first Chris Marker, that it's one of the greatest documentaries of all time, and also of filmmaker of all time. And in Chris Marker, there's always question about what is cinema, and I would like to ask you too, what kind of idea of cinema came out from your movie? Because this machine could be seen as a relation between the audience and cinema, audience and screens.
Yeah, yeah. You get an interesting point, because this machine really is trying to talk about what is image, right? And what is word, but it faces a problem with these images that it receives to watch people. So it receives some images, and this machine is trying to solve something out about these images. So in some way, it's also thinking about what is cinema. In some way, it's thinking about what we can do with images, and it's an interesting point, because it's also what found footage cinema is about. In some way, it's about, you take some archive images that are in the world, and tries to put it into some way that talks with each other. And this machine is also trying to do the same thing. So it's a very essayistic movie, and it was the purpose. I received it's funny, because a friend of mine, a distant friend of mine that is also in the cinema, told me that it was a very just discursive movie. It's a lot of discourse in this movie. I didn't like because he said I didn't like because it has a lot of discourse. I prefer something more silent, and I think that if you put some more silence in this movie, it was going to be better. But I appreciate this critic in some way, because I also like other reference in cinema that are more silent and less wordy. Né? But I think that it is that it's movie about. It's about discourse in some way, and it's about language and how language and image compose together, and it's about how cinema is going, how we are making cinema today. So it's experimental try on some getting some old reference in cinema and some classical references and well established as Prismark Care, but getting something new, something that we are all facing when we think aesthetics, when we think language, and so.
Okay, and what do you think the machine could process as image about today Brazil? Because your movie was made in 2019, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It was
what about
concluded.
2020? You see a difference, or what this last month stimulate you in and the machine?
Yeah, it's funny because I exhibited this movie also in a Brazilian festival in Curitiba last year. A person asked me if this movie was about fake news, and I laughed a little bit because it was not my initial thinking. But if you approach the movie as a movie about language, you'll think about what we are facing now in some way in the world. I would say, not only in Brazil, about the problem with fake news, because it's a movie which talks about that in some way too. And I think when I think 2020 in Brazil, I think we are facing basically problems that we were facing in this past 8 years, but in a way that it's more catastrophic. It's a big tragedy, and we have this mess with pandemic, and this mess with our president, and these problems that were in Brazil in the past 8 years. It's like they came with some terrific face, but it is some problems that we are not capable of facing. These problems, they are here, but they were in Brazil in the past 8 years, and so this year it's more catastrophic. But these problems are here so much years. So I think this movie it's getting some images of Brazil that and this speech about Brazil that unfortunately it's pretty recent. It's pretty contemporary. So I think that if you think in some elements of Brazilian politics today, it also talks about this. It also talks about our problem with surveillance, our problem with I think with policy problems, our problem with all kind of problems.
Yeah. And just the last questions. What is next for you in the future? You're working on other works. Let's explain as what's next for you.
Yeah, I am writing to another script right now. They are for short movies also. One of these scripts it's a fiction movie, so it's kind of a little bit different, a police, but it's in the certain way that it also talk about the same problems. It's a movie about police violence in Brazil. That is a matter that it's a special matter for me. And I also working in a more experimental short movie right now that I edited some little piece of this new movie I'm thinking. That is also an essayistic movie. It's also, I think these are these two projects I'm thinking right now. But it's funny to talk about this because when you here in Brazil we are facing some great problems also with cinema. with cinema investment, public investment. Our government in a fight is in a struggle against filmmakers here in Brazil.
Yeah,
So
can you explain that for the audience that might cannot knew about what is happening between cinema and cinema world and Brazilian government?
okay, it's kind of complex, but I think that I can put a resume. So it's kind of here in Brazil we are facing since 2016, since 2014 and 2016 a difficult economic crisis. So there are some politics and in now our actual government that says we have to spend less every kind of areas of investment. But our government is also extreme right government. It's a government which thinks that cinema and other cultural productions are communist. In this way, they are thinking that they cannot invest in cinema because it's a communist area of the country, and in this way they are lowering the investment in cinema. And here in Brazil, we have a lot of difficulties with private investment, and not only in cinema but in other cultural works. So our government is in a struggle against cinema because of ideological and economical things, basically that.
Thank you, Rafael. It's been a pleasure,
Thank you
and
too.
I hope to see you soon in Lago, maybe with your next movies. And
Okay.
thank you for being here today with us.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you too, and thank you to the festival to receive my movie. Bye bye.